Hello, this video will be on cutting skills. We're going to start with basic cutting, so introducing children to scissor use, and then go to more complicated cutting skills. It'll follow a little bit of a trajectory. So you can jump in wherever it fits for your child developmentally. A lot of times we move towards the more complex cutting skills, cutting out shapes like a circle, square, and then going forward from there around that 4.5 to kindergarten age. So early kindergarten skill that we look for. Starting with the basics of cutting, we're going to begin with snipping. That's the first thing we want our kids to learn. Often we'll try to introduce this in preschool when it makes sense to do so. One thing that we can do to help this process is using thick materials to cut, so not always flimsy paper. So I can have a Play-Doh log here, and we can snip the Play-Doh instead. So you pretend we're making treats, or kind of cooking, or just sort of fun with the texture, and cut out Play-Doh pieces. One way to learn that snip. We can also use thicker materials like a straw. One thing we may notice as we teach scissor use is that the elbow may tend to pop up and our hand will turn in, right? As we're learning to coordinate this, get the hand strength and our kind of what we call our hand arch, this dip in our hand. So as we're learning, that's kind of going to be a possible movement that will come up. We want to discourage this as much as we can. We can sit on that side of our child to make sure their elbow is in. We can also have them hold something under their elbow, so like a towel, stuffed animal, pillow, to encourage them to squeeze and keep that elbow in as we learn to snip. This trick can also be handy later on, so I'll probably remind of that again if we talk higher level cutting skills, because as we move up to each different level, we see that focus come back in, we might kind of go back to that movement. And we want to keep correcting it so that we can keep going forward. Other things that we can do in this early stage of cutting is just really strengthening what we call, again, those hand arches that we talked about, that divot in our hand, the squeeze with these pincher fingers, separating those pincher fingers out. So some fun activities could be if you have a squirt bottle. You can use this, an easy time to use it is like maybe bathtub time, because you can get anything wet. You can put soap up on the wall and spray it off. This is good squeeze, right? Similar squeeze to cutting. You need to have a strong squeeze. You can feel your hand arch forming there as you squeeze. You can do this with a marker board too. Sometimes it's fun to draw monsters and have your kid erase them. Another thing outside with chalk on the sidewalk, you can have them spray off the letters as you find them, or numbers. Water flowers, lots of different things you can do with that. Another thing, if you happen to have some kitchen kind of fruit tongs, these can be handy. You can take any sort of object you can pick up. Cotton balls work nicely. I have these craft pom-poms here. You can fill up a bowl. Maybe pretend we're filling up a dinner bowl for a doll or another toy you have. Make it playful. We can also work on counting skills with this. You can put one each into a muffin tin and count up to 6. Lots of different things. Again, we're really working on that pinch and separating out these 3 fingers in a coordinated way. If you don't have these and you're interested in making tongs, one thing that I found we can rig up at home is taking, I have chopsticks here, but where you can use popsicle sticks from outside. You're just getting 2 sort of sticks, maybe even forks together, and putting, I have 4 actually, cotton balls squeezed up here and rubber banded at the top, but just to make it a squeezable object. And you can see it actually does work. It's just a little bit more finesse. So, woo, you got it. Smaller ones may be easier with these homemade ones so that you can get a good grip on it. So that's a way you can play with those sort of things at home. So it's all important for early cutting and snipping. Another thing that we can do is start by just marking, once we move towards paper, marking places that we can cut. So just making a few for a fringe on the bottom. And we can also add stickers to the top of each little line, so it can be, cut to the flower or whatever our sticker is. Again, we help with putting the hand in the right spot. We encourage this elbow in, whether that's sitting next to them on that side or putting something under the elbow. And we work on snips. And one cue that we can use is open with the scissors, shut. And as we say that open, shut, they start to understand that they need to kind of go between to make that movement, open, shut. Once we're able to make these snips, we see that's down. A next step can be seen, can we just cut a paper in half? It doesn't necessarily have to be a neat line, but we just want to see consecutive open, shut, open, shut. So we're going to keep that cue going, open, shut, open, shut, open, shut, and see if we can get all the way across our paper. A big skill with this is also having that other hand hanging on, so not letting it be a one-handed activity. So getting two involved. One adaptation we can also make is if you have, it can be on the edge of a table. I'm going to show it on the wall just so it's easier to see in this video. But we can tape up the paper. And what that does, we'll be positioned towards it, facing towards it as we cut. What that does sometimes is keeping that hand in a good centered position and keeping the paper lined up nicely. So sometimes cutting vertically is helpful. Kind of add some extra stability as our kids are learning to learn how to cut up in a straight line. Then, once we're able to make those consecutive snips on a paper, we can start challenging with kind of different lines. So it can be focusing on the control to not deviate from a straight line. We can also start making wavy lines, lines that have a little zigzag to them. So we can start making some challenge mazes to see if our children can follow without falling off the road. So really highlight those lines and try to focus on control to follow lines with some deviation to it after we get the straight ones down. Then moving towards our higher level cutters, we want to be able to cut out complex shapes. So we can start drawing circles, squares, and really a skill that's going to be important in that is turning your paper. So if you're always moving your paper like this as you're cutting, it's going to get awkward, right? So as we cut, we got to kind of be able to take our hands and adjust. To teach that skill, one of my favorites is just learning how to cut a swirl, like a snail shell or sort of a snaky look to it. To do that at home easily, what you can do is take a paper, round off the corners first. You can have your child help with this, or you can do this first step just to get it set up. So we're going to round the corners on our paper. Even that, you see, we're already learning to turn our paper. So now we have some more of a circular piece of paper. It doesn't have to be perfect. And we're going to draw a swirl in here. And the fun part is, once we finish cutting the swirl, it is a kind of like a coil your child can pick up, and it's sort of a cool thing that they did. It can be kind of motivating. So I have my swirl. To start out, I'm leaving a good amount of distance between all of these lines. If we make it too close, it's too easy to get frustrated and mess up and cross the lines. So start out with a good wide space between the lines. And you may want to, again, put something under the elbow as needed, because as we're learning to turn the paper, and it's more complicated, you may see that elbow lift again. So sit on that side to keep it in, or again, have them hold something underneath. And soft. So I'm just going to keep that in as a model. So I'm going to use that adaptation. Let's say I'm just kind of struggling to keep that elbow in. We got our thumbs up position. Another way that we can kind of mark that is put little dots with a marker on top of that little thumbs up. Can also be a cue. We got to keep that up. And I'm going to cut along the swirl. The swirl shape naturally includes a lot of turning. So I'm doing it with turning nicely. What we might see though is my hand staying behind and getting it kind of pulled awkwardly. So you want to keep encouraging our child to keep that hand coming along and not have the hand too far up above either, because that's awkward. So keeping it nearby, inching along as we cut along. So have them stop as needed and move that finger up just slightly each time we cut a few inches. So that's the skill we're learning, is turning our paper as we cut. What you have when you're done is this fun coil. At the top you can add eyes and a mouth for a fun little snake if you would like. And that is the more advanced skill working. Again, once you have that down, you should be able to go forward and learn to cut out shapes for different crafts. Something that pops up every so often at school. So I hope that helps you kind of an overview of how we progress going forward with cutting. Definitely, of course, supervise throughout all of these. And one thing that you may have some familiarity with is adapted scissors. So if you've seen some with like a little kickstand, for our early cutters, that's not a bad idea if they're struggling to coordinate the open shut, because it helps them reopen the scissors. It kind of helps push it back into the right position. So that's also totally fine for our pre-K or early scissor users. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have fun trying some of this out.